Welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and I'm here as always with Tom Roberge from Riff Raff.
Hello.
How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Summer is over, alas.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all. We had our first class last Wednesday.
I have no connection to anything academic or school related, but I just today, going out to do some errands this morning, I already noticed the vast difference in traffic related to all the schools and everything like that, and buses and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, it's the quiet months are over.
Absolutely. I was going to make a joke that I had gotten used to the summer bike riding where I didn't have to worry about getting run over all the time, but now it's right back to people swerving into my lane, trying to hit me on left turns, all the normal fun stuff.
Yeah. Although for us, I will say it's nice to know that people are spending less time at the beach or wherever. So I think business will pick up slightly. It was a little quiet in the summer just because people have being so close to the beach and all of that sort of stuff that everybody goes and does those kinds of things as much as possible.
But don't they stop by first to crash in a Horkai to bring to the beach first?
Right, right. I'm talking more about the bar and whatever cafe during those kind of that side of the business. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
so
Labor Day, so sad. Oh well. So you wanted to talk about you had found an article that you wanted to go over today, and it was the one that there's a bunch of articles related to this particular topic, but the one that you sent me was from The Verge, and it's written by Sarah Jiang, who happens to be the semi-controversial hire by the New York Times, who caused a little bit of a Twitter stir not too many months ago over things that she had posted before she got hired about hating white people and whatever else, which is interesting. I didn't realize that's who it was until after I read this article. But do you want to summarize the article? Because it's fucking amazing.
I don't know that I'm going to be very good at this, but I will attempt it.
Okay.
Um,
There's
so
so many bits to it. We could just start with one and go from there too.
Right. So I'm sitting, I'm tending bar one night, and there's a regular customer who lives in the building, and he always comes in for late, 10:30 at night, and just for one drink, hangs up, we talk for a little bit. I don't know what he does for a living exactly, but it's clearly in the tech field, and so he's always aware of little gossipy sort of fun things about the tech world. And he asked me if I've heard of this. He said, "Have you heard of Cockkygate?" I was like, "I'm sorry, what word are you saying?" And he starts explaining this to me, and then he's like, "Just Google Cockkygate and The Verge, and you'll get this article that explains it all." So basically, it's a whole lot of controversy surrounding the payment. It's basically a bunch of romance writers whose books are published in digital form only, and who are then sold on Amazon, especially in I'm totally blanking on the name of it, but they is it called
Kindle
Unlimited?
Unlimited? Yeah.
Kindle Unlimited, which is basically, for lack of a better definition, the Netflix of digital books.
Right.
And it turns out that the authors who write these books are paid on a per view or read basis.
Per page.
And that is all measured via how far customers get into the books and sort of things like that. So good so far.
Yeah, although there really are two lines to it. One is the lawsuit, which then opens up to the second part of this whole world of how they're using Amazon and Kindle Unlimited and all of that, because they're connected, but they're one without the lawsuit. The basic lawsuit part was that one woman had written a series of books about the Cockers, which are the family, and she used the word cocky in the titles of those books as the series, and someone else wrote a book called Her Cocky Firefighters, or Her Cocky Doctors. I forget whichever one it was. And so at the same time that a bunch of romance writers decided to use the word cocky in their titles for this particular month, which opens up into the second part of this. But when so the woman who originally had the Cocker Brothers series with all the cocky stuff sued the other people for violating her copyright of using the word cocky in the title of her romance novels, and that these other people were detracting from her work because Amazon would frequently end up linking these books together because they had the word cocky in the title, hence the cocky gate.
Correct. And just to clarify, it is both her cocky doctors and her cocky firefighters. Um, presumably there are more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Cocky
two,
Rumi is a good one too.
these are all about uh, group sex. I don't know what's the polite term for this.
It just keeps saying MFM.
Yeah, MFM menage romance.
There we go.
So there you go.
Hello to
Anyway,
anyone who's listening to us for the first time.
do not usually talk in such terms. We reserve our swearing for
Oh,
aggressive complaints of things.
here it is. Here's I couldn't find the full list. Here's some of the names. So the woman who's suing the 19-book Cocker Brothers series is about six brothers and later their children, all who have the last name Cocker and are pretty cocky. There's Cocky Roomy, Cocky Biker, Cocky Marine, Cocky Senator. Not all the books have that same formula. 19 is Cocky Mother's Day, and book 7 is a Honey Badger Christmas.
Okay. What is that your Christmas?
Oh, but in general, the title describes what you're going to get. It's a romance book about an arrogant man or woman with a particular job description.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so the lawsuit is obviously over. I guess it's not over. Is it over trademark
Yeah, it's
infringement?
over. If it's over whether she filed two trademarks. Felina Hopkins is the woman that's doing that brought the lawsuit that has the Cocker Brothers series. She registered two trademarks in 2016 for the word cocky in romance titles. One was for the image of the word in a stylized cursive font. The other was a quote unquote word mark, just the word cocky in and of itself. Now you can't really own a word, but you can, because like Apple, you can't start a computer company and name it Apple, obviously, right? And you also can't have books that are Harry Potter. So there's like different things that are based on series that you can trademark. So you can't use Harry Potter, but you could call something Philosopher's Stone and, something else and
Right.
Tom Roberge, and that wouldn't be a problem. But the Harry Potter Magic School Bus is the other example they use. Things like that are like brands that are series. You can protect those so that people can't just like openly exploit your brand. Like I don't think you can name a book like Jack Ryan or I don't know. That's a guy, right? That's a
That
TV
is
show.
the
Okay.
character, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, things are protected because otherwise it would be too easy to do knockoff versions of it, which in and of themselves are bad because you're profiting off of someone else's work, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But secondly, the sort of argument that the first author was trying to make was that it was degrading her product because of the other product.
Yeah, you don't want
Right.
Cocky Marine to be degraded.
Right. Exactly. Anyway, so this lawsuit, which you told me before we started recording, has now been thrown out.
Yeah, it seems like it was resolved that there's no that there's that it, the other books were not degrading her or violating her terms at all, and that the judge had indicated that it was almost possibly even done in bad faith. I mean, the quote is, um, Judge Elvin Hellerstein said, in sum, there's nothing meritorious about plaintiff's situation, let alone urgent or irreparable. Defendant Watson cannot offer plaintiffs the relief they seek, as she bears no responsibility for the cocktails anthology they wish to enjoin from further publication. Defendant Crescent's first allegedly infringing book was published over 9 months ago. Plaintiffs have admitted that her use of cocky in titles would not likely cause confusion as to source or affiliation. Moreover, she has publicly stated she has not suffered lost sales. So basically, yeah, the bullshit lawsuit.
Right. But to go back to what I started, which was the interesting part of this
Yes.
to me, is the sort of complicated way that writers are paid via the Kindle Unlimited program.
Right.
And gaming of that system that a few authors figured out and exploited to really incredible
It's
levels.
amazing. Every part of this is amazing. So if you remember, we did an episode of this about these self-published Amazon Kindle books before Kindle Unlimited, but it was the 99-cent John Locke books, um,
Right.
and how he wrote a book called like How to Sell a Million eBooks in 12 months or some shit like that, and he basically used all these different theories on like how you get various people to send out your book to their mailing list, how you create this community, how you price your books at 99 cents because that's the only way to go, and that you get people to buy them all simultaneously so that then they'll become bestsellers and thus start like this kind of ball rolling. All of which seems, and also he was one of the people who was in the later. There was a scandal involving people who are paying for 5-star reviews because those also help your algorithm. The whole idea is to game Amazon's algorithm so that your book is in front of more viewers that could, or customers that could potentially purchase it. And he was one of the parts of the scandal about people paying for reviews in hopes of altering that algorithm by getting suddenly like 500 5-star reviews in which you buy them and the person never reads those books. They just, write some garbage. Cause I mean, you can write a 5-star review without reading something pretty
Oh yeah.
easily. And so he was part of that too. So he was, and all of those sort of schemes to get people to buy his books, which ended up making him $1 million. Let's not let that go by the wayside. He are so innocent compared to what they're doing now with these romance books.
Yeah. So again, it's complicated, and I'm trying to summarize it in the simplest way possible because really everyone should just read this article because there's so much evidence and
Yeah.
uh, back and forth between these people who are sort of, is collusion a proper word here?
I mean, I guess you're colluding to defraud Amazon, but you're not, because so the way that it works is it's sort of like Spotify. Amazon has a pot in which they have X amount of revenue that's allocated to Kindle Unlimited authors every month based on the number of subscriptions there are, and whatever other things that they have. But they have a number, so it's like I think they said that one month it was like $20 million.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
significant amount of money.
it's a lot of money, and there's a lot of books that are obviously on Kindle Unlimited. And so then what it does is the Amazon, in theory, the base version, the naive version of how this would work is that if you're an author and you get X thousands of your pages of your works read during that month, all of that's added together, and if you're as the total number of pages read under Kindle Unlimited, you get a percentage of those that were of your books that were read. You get the equal percentage of the total pot for you. So sort of like Spotify has a pot, and then it's broken up among like the different labels. This is saying among authors. So if John Grisham, for whatever, 10% of the pages read through Kindle Unlimited during the month of August 2018 were from John Grisham books, then John Grisham would get 10% of that total pot that had been allocated to the writers. Then it becomes complicated.
Right. It's also the key thing to stress here is pages, right? Like it's
Yes.
not just that the book is quote unquote borrowed,
Mm-hmm.
right, from the
Right.
library, and no one knows if they are read or not, right? Like how many people probably borrow books from the library, read 10 pages, get wrapped up in something else, and then pretty soon it's due back at the library. They didn't actually read much of it at all, right?
Right.
So this sort of accounting, I'm going to call it, functions truly on a page by page level. And so these authors figured out that there are ways to make it appear as though their books have been read cover to cover, even though they haven't, sort of amping up their page totals, even if the books aren't being read at all.
And there's
Um,
so many good levels to this. Like the simple one initially of being like bigger fonts so that it's
right,
more
right.
pages. And Amazon's like, no, 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 we figured that one out. We
Yeah,
solved that
exactly.
problem. That's not an issue. And then they're like, okay, well, what if we like make our books 3,000 pages long?
Right.
And so they start, I guess they have like inside of them, they'll have Google Translate translated versions of their book into like 50 or 60 different languages, just like packed on there with at the very end of that, some new material about like a forthcoming book or an author interview or something, and have a link at the beginning of the ebook file so that you can click right to go to the end, thus making it look like you've read all 3,000 pages of this cocky doctor's book.
Which that seems weird to me. That would I would not have thought that would have worked, but
And
apparently it did.
Amazon claims that they know how to stop that, but that's still, I mean, you'd have to be then mapping time and page count, I guess, and looking at two metrics.
Well, and the other problem is, and I'm at this paragraph where it says there are currently over 5 million books available
I know.
through. So, like, they can't check every single one. Like, how many? I mean, do the math. Like, how many of these being uploaded every single day, right? And you're telling me it's gonna go through a program that's gonna read it and check for these sorts of cheats, basically. It's just they can't do it.
No.
It's just it's way too much just streaming past them.
That and one of the great bits to bring this back to the money part is that every time this is one of the paragraphs. Every time a reader reads to the end of a 3,000 page book, the author earns almost $14.
Which is not bad. I mean, that's
Yeah.
more than they would get if there was a print book. I mean, I guess at 3,000 pages, that would be a very expensive paperback book. But
God, yeah.
so, but they're making that amount of money instead of,
Yep.
they would probably get $4 of that if that were in physical book format.
Yeah, or for their against their advance or whatever, and that would be yeah, and then if you can get that book to the top of the unlimited chart, that's going to be hundreds of thousands of clicks. So 14 times 1,000,
Right.
you're making a lot of money in a month if you can game the system. So they created like ways to game it, and then they even have their like subculture whatever they call it, River? Is it River? That's like Slack but not Slack. And
Yeah.
they have their own little group in there that basically discuss ways to game the system, including
And
making
yeah.
everyone's book have the same focus in a given month. So like everyone does firefighter books for August or whatever. And so because of all of that, the algorithm starts grouping together all these books and everyone gets more and more clicks.
Right. It, it also, I mean, they're also helping each other. Like they're all obviously Amazon Kindle Unlimited customers, and they're
Yeah.
sort of in there helping their friends out in exchange for, do you know what I mean? And so
They're building
they're
community,
getting,
man. They're building community.
yeah. So they get the ball rolling in order to get all of this sort of stuff started. But the only thing that I'm unclear about is like how many customers would be just totally turned off by that thing with like the link that drags them through 3,000 pages.
I think that they okay, so here's a very probably stupid reading of that is that if you are someone who likes these kind of romance books and these people are cranking them out, like let's say they're making 12 a year, but you like this particular romance author. I think romance is a loose term for this, by the way. But you like these books and you read this person's book and you enjoy it, then if by clicking through and getting them their full money, you're just encouraging them to write more books for you. And so why wouldn't you? Why would you care? Like it's not your money that's paying them. You've paid your $9.99 a month to have access to as many books as you want. Whatever Amazon ends up giving them, that's Amazon's money.
I guess that's true. I mean, I just like as a reading experience, don't you think it would be sort of irritating?
I think I would know because it starts out with the English book that ends on page like 100, and then it's just like Hebrew, Japanese, Chinese versions. And you're just like whatever, just go to the end, read the person's like next forthcoming few pages from the forthcoming book, and just go on. I mean, when you have an ebook, it doesn't. It's not burdensome in that way. It's like clicking a link.
So that's all it is. You just
Yeah,
click a link, skips over everything.
skips over everything, but it marks it as having been read.
That's weird.
Because I have a Kindle and I use it for certain things, mostly checking books out from the library to use when I'm at the gym. But the yeah, you can just go to wherever you want inside the book, and I mean it's just a file. It's not like carrying anything around. It's not like it's annoying. You just can go right past it. You don't even see it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And I mean, it's the same thing. It's none of these people are going to say anything to Amazon, right? Like, why would they ruin
Yeah,
a good thing, right? I guess you're right. In their mind, they're getting access to all of these books that they really like, and they just have to click on a link that's sort of that's it. So yeah, why would they complain? I
yeah.
guess they want these people to keep writing. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, so yes, this all. I feel like we're glossing over some so, crucial elements here to why this got outed, I suppose, is that the Cockeygate thing, apart from the lawsuit between one author and another, there was also, as you said, because they were working together, these groups, this group of writers, cabal. Let's call them a cabal,
Yeah,
where
Cabal.
where writing at such a pace that I think I don't want to say quality got degraded, but like sometimes people like wrote things that sort of not everyone else supported
Hmm.
thematically. Like there's a line in here where it says they got more. He started publishing more and more rapey, really inappropriate content, right? And so there started to be this rift, and of course people threatened to out each other as part of this cabal, and that's where all of this started coming to light, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there is within here some sort of actual literary sort of um, controversy in the idea that some of the writing in this group just went off in really horrible directions. And so that is what sort of brought this all. Like they thought they had a good thing going with like these, romance novels, like in the traditional sense. And of course, it got ruined by some dude writing rapey stuff.
Yeah, and he was writing. He was the one who founded Book Clicker, which is one of the crowd that like sort of manipulates this. And he was writing under a woman's name, Abby Weeks, and then it
Oh,
became, and then
right.
he's transitioned over after like things got more inappropriate. Although like they just seem like they also just like fell apart. Like any one of these kind of groups generally tend to do at some point is like the entropy sets in and it all just goes to shit. But they're also like there's crazy things on there where people will have written books and they'll sell them to other people so that person can like make more money off of it because they have a brand. So like if I
Right.
wrote one of these what are you a cocky publisher book and could offer it up to like one of these other romance writers for like $1,000 because they're going to make way more than $1,000 because they already have a following, whereas I would not be able to break into that. And that's
Right.
that's also like kind of this sketchy underbelly world that's like not really. I mean it's not. I don't know that that's illegal, but it's
No,
definitely not ethical.
no, it's. I mean, these are ghost-written books,
Yeah.
basically. And yeah, it's these people, like you said, they do actually build up a brand. They did do the work to build up that brand, and they probably wrote many of their own books to begin with. But then they realize, I can pay, and this is, I mean, I've seen these listings on like freelance sort of websites. Before we were open, I was doing some of that stuff. Not this, but like you'll see these ads for people offering. I need a romance novel written in 10 days, and here's the basic plot outline. You do the writing, I'll edit it. Blah blah blah. Pay of $200.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, when you do the math on it, it's like, good God, that's so little
Yeah.
money. But, and then they're going to turn around and if they have a brand already, they just, put their little finishing touches on it and sell it as if they wrote it. And that's that, and they get to make the money. And meanwhile, the person who actually did all the heavy lifting there, writing that particular book, got $200 one time.
I
And
mean, I might be wrong about this, but if you gave like a plot like outline like that for one of these books, and they're not super long generally, but even if they were fairly long, like novella length, you could crank one of those out in 10 hours. You're not
sure,
you're not
yes.
putting any thought into this. Like
No,
just
but it's
writing
still,
whatever comes next.
right.
20
It's
bucks an
still,
hour to write a shitty book?
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's not unethical. It's just it's kind of gross, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everyone involved has every right to do this. It's just kind of gross.
I
I
mean, I
don't
guess
know.
the ethical part I was thinking is that they don't acknowledge that they didn't write the book, which makes it a
That
little
is,
less that's a little bit sketchier.
of course, yes, right. Like they, oh God, I'm gonna blank. Like the Tom Clancy thing. Like now they just stick his name on things. Tom Clancy's Born, but it's or that's not right. Robert Ludlum's Born books, and then it's clearly written by. They give the person credit on the cover. You know
Right.
what I mean?
James
Even though,
Patterson.
yeah, they give the other person credit, even though if yeah, James Patterson's name is much larger and is clearly the selling point of the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
So fascinating though.
yeah, I don't really know what the takeaway here is, except that like man, there are a lot of people making a lot of money on Amazon. Really, I mean, part of me is like really impressed that people were able to do this,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because like, who are they taking money from, really? Like it's kind of I won't say victimless, but it's definitely a kind of system that deserved to be exploited in some way. Um,
Right. I guess because it's a zero sum game, the victim would be everyone who's doing this legitimately and not stuffing their books.
sure,
That
absolutely.
they're working. You writing your 300 page like book that you can't get published by a traditional publisher, but you have it on here, and you're getting like 50, 60 readers a month, and you're getting dicked because like it's only 300 pages instead of 3,000.
Right.
And these people are and because there's no more money for you. That part there's that those people are getting screwed. And there's I mean it's that part's weird, but like I'm still in awe of like all the ways. But people will always figure this out. No matter what they put in there, someone will figure out a way around it. People are
Oh, of course.
ingenious.
Yeah. 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 People. It's funny. I mean, at a certain point, you have to wonder, like, they put so much effort into gaming the system. Why don't they just do it the right way? Like they spend all this time trying to recode things and do all of that when they could just, actually do it legitimately in the
I
same amount of time.
I can't imagine it takes that long to like add some crap to your book. Because some of them were like HTML files with like just like nonsense lorem ipsum for like 1,000 pages. Like, what? It's just like, well, until I get caught, who cares? But they
Yeah, I
did.
guess that's the thing, right? I mean, they just do it until they get caught. And then, how hard is it to just set up with another email address and start over again, right?
Oh my god. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. So, anyways, so I don't know if there's anything else to say about this. Did you want to talk about pretty things?
Emma is somewhere else in the apartment, and she'll be in a moment. Um,
So that's not
what
a
book?
great segue, is what you're saying.
Yes. What did you want to talk about? We're trying to, in full disclosure here for longtime listeners, trying to get back to the roots of the podcast and be more diligent about talking about upcoming translated books or recently published or that sort of thing, just to serve as a little bit of a filter for our listeners. Although my impression is that our listeners are probably pretty keyed into what's going on in the world we inhabit. But
I think that
who
they know what's coming out. I think that our takes on things that are coming out or that have come out are of interest.
Right. Yes. That's fair enough. Also, everybody likes a little, I don't want to say review, but, it's always, I'm more likely to read a book if someone I know and who knows what I like has read it and says, hey, you'll really like this. It's your thing, right?
Yeah,
Instead of whatever, jacket copy or, the publisher's website.
right, exactly. The book that I read
Um,
most recently that I finished and actually really liked, aside from Fox, the Ugreshik book, we're doing the last 2 month review podcast on that, covering the end of it tomorrow, I believe. But that finishing that for the third time now and seeing like all the layers to it was absolutely mind blowing. That book is so incredibly crafted, and it's so easy to just go right past that because she's got such a like light sort of touch to her writing and like very funny and like very quick. But if you slow down with it, that book really benefits from like multiple readings. But aside from that, the other book that I read recently that I really liked was The Governesses. The is it Anne
oh God,
Sarah?
Sarah, Sarah's? I can't remember what
And
it's.
yep,
Emma
prepared.
recently read that and loved it
It's really
as
fun.
well.
It's so short. It's
Really
so
fun.
short.
Yeah. She said it sort of got repetitive at the end, but
Yeah, that's what I said too. Like in the middle, there's a moment in the middle where it's like, I don't want to read this anymore right now because I feel like I'm just going through the same stuff over and over again. But it's kind of fable like. It's got a sort of like play like quality to it, where it's not really realistic. And has kind of a like a set piece of where all these three governesses are on this particular manor. But it's really fun. The tone is wonderful. It's a little like it's pretty sexy. It's well written and well translated in a way that like as much juicier. I did a post last week about 3 books that I read, one of which I couldn't remember anything from, which is a collection of short stories, which I couldn't find the book either. So like that was odd. And then a book from World Editions, which World Editions is doing a lot of great stuff about, especially by women in translation. But the book was very like mundane and conventional. And then this one stood out so much compared to those two as being like a really interesting tone to it, and really like much more fun to read and just an enjoyable, short, quick book. Which contrasts because I've
Yeah.
decided this month that in addition to reading a few other things I really want to read, I've decided to read all of my Struggle book 6 this month, and then all of Anniversaries next month, and write about that every week for the next 2 months, which is insane and, and daunting.
Yes.
These
Just
books are
before we go
wild.
on, I think we glossed over what the governance is actually about. If you would like to,
Yeah, it's about 3 young governesses who live on this particular manor, and they have like they're sort of a very like sexualized women who like are in control of like what they're doing. Then they wait for like strangers to come by, they seize those strangers and like and use them, and they're also like sort of planning a party. They're taking care of the kids, and it all is like this sort of Edenic life for them, and then it has to eventually sort of fall apart and end. And so in the meantime, in between like their beginning where it's like them planning this party and it's kind of like this very light tone, it becomes like not erotic's the wrong word, but it's like a very sensual book, and that it's very playful in the way that they're portrayed and like how they toy with other people are in the vicinity.
yeah, I feel like I don't know when this book was written. I'm trying to
It's like
figure it out.
99, I think.
Okay. It feels very much like and this is from the French, just so everyone's aware, but it feels very much like a 60s era French New Wave um, movie of not of like the breathless variety, but one of the more fun sort of over sexualized sort of movies. I'm trying to think of a good movie to compare it to, and I'm blanking. Like the Petit Charme of the Bourgeois,
Yeah.
like that sort of like you said, like set piece with a lot of sex and humor and sort of that sort of stuff going on.
It also
Um,
sort of has that tone of like those the French minimalists from like the 80s. So like the early Toussaint books or Lidie Salver or those people. It's sort of in that vein too.
oh yeah, Tucson is a good comparison. Yeah, I'm gonna have to read this next. I'm reading another New Directions book now, actually, that according to the jacket comes out in October. Um, it is called The Hole. I don't know if you've heard about this
I'm gonna
yet.
read that next on my list to read next month for the weekly articles.
It won't take you long. It's
No,
maybe 90 pages with a 20-page introduction by Alvaro Enrique.
and those pages are small pages.
And they are small pages. Yes, this is a small trim size. So this book was written in the 60s, 69, by a Mexican writer named Jose Revueltas. And it's basically about 2 guys who are in solitary confinement. I guess that's the wrong term. Together in a prison, and to have all these schemes for getting their much needed drugs into them in the hole. And they, in the process of just describing all of this, describe prison life in general at the time, which is just fascinating. So as you might expect, it's very dark and dirty and grimy. And the thing that's standing out to me so far is that it's got a weird Crash and Horkai sort of style to it at moments, where the sentences are super long and sort of circling back on themselves eventually, but in between have all of these asides and all of these wonderful, like, rich details that sort of add and add and add and add, and then you come back to the point that they were trying to make. That he was trying to make at the beginning of the sentence, but it's not constantly like that. It is punctuated with sort of shorter sentences as well, but it definitely has that feeling of like being in the muck with somebody just moved to tell you everything about everything. To paint the scene here. Anyway, I'm really enjoying it. I did skip over the introduction because I just wanted to get to the story, but
Yeah,
maybe
and he is a Mexican writer, correct?
I believe. Yeah, I think this is another one of those things that Barbara Epler at New Directions, I think she told me it was one of these things that like, I'm forgetting who told her about it. Oh God, what's his name? That, it was one of these things where like he was shocked it hadn't been translated into English, and it was like it needed to be translated. And 9 months
Yeah.
later, so
So he did die in 1976. He was a Mexican, and he spent 2.5 years as a prisoner in Mexico City.
right.
So
Oh yeah, no, it's
yeah,
definitely like you had to spend time in prison to have these like details and that sort of thing. That's very very obvious. All right, so Emma is here. We want to
now we can transition.
now we can and sort of segue into discussion of her. I don't know if latest is the right word. She had two things come out in close succession here. Another being a book by. Well, maybe I'll let her talk about it. Go ahead.
I don't know what you're referring to.
The Bonani also just came out. So
That came out before this. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say the mess you saw.
Is that out yet?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, who knows, really?
Who knows? Who knows with these things? Anyway, so we're here to talk about her translation of Virginie Despentes. What year was it written? 80?
Oh, God.
90?
It was originally 1998.
98 novel Pretty Things by the Feminist Press. Go ahead, Emma.
Oh.
What do you want to, Chad, do you have any questions for her?
I'll get to questions first, but for anyone who's listening, we have talked about Despentes before a couple times because you were a big fan of hers, Tom, and Feminist Press has been doing a series of her books over the past, I don't know how many years. I forget what the name of the one was that we talked about.
Apocalypse Baby.
Yes, Apocalypse Baby. That's exactly what it was. But you were a fan of King Kong Theory, which they also did, and then this came out this summer, and I read this on vacation, and I thought it was absolutely wonderful. But I don't want to describe it. Do you want to describe it, Emma?
Sure. I'm really bad at describing the things that I translate, but basically it's about two twin sisters, one of whom is desperate for fame and is always dressing up, making herself look like every man's dream, kind of in that game of femininity and makeup and performance of femininity to kind of get what she wants, but has no talent. And her twin sister is totally not in that realm. She doesn't care about how she looks, but she has a beautiful singing voice and wants money. And the idea is that they'll kind of team up. The one who can sing will sing, and the other one will kind of reap the benefits of the fame, and they'll both end up with some money, and it's going to be this win-win situation, and then things go terribly awry, and without ruining anything. I don't know if it says it on the back. No, it doesn't.
I don't think it does, because there's no description.
Right. So, which I guess was purposeful to not give away what happens, but basically things go awry, and the twin who didn't care about any of these things before and was totally outside of Paris and outside of cities and outside of the world of advertising and the world of, beauty, gets really caught up in it and has to navigate it and gets kind of sucked into it. And it just totally fucks up her life. And she kind of learns through going through all of that what her sister was doing. And she learns more about her sister and kind of the deep sadness of being forced into this kind of world of beauty and commodification and consumption and fame and men and, just that whole world and what it did to her sister.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it really does keep turning over and over again and opening up new questions about all of the things that you're mentioning. It also, one thing that I find interesting about her writing is that it has a tension between like being like a strong feminist critique on like a sort of not abstract but a theoretical and like broad sort of global level, but then it has like this very pulpy, very like plot driven aspect.
And I love that about Despentes. I think it was the same with Apocalypse Baby, where there is this big finale at the end that's making this big social, political commentary about the state of the world, but her books are just fun to read, and it's really refreshing to kind of be able to translate a book that's not hitting you over the head with some political message or what. I mean, there is a message in this book, but she's able to get that message across through having a really fun page turner, pulpy book, as opposed to this like very serious, like story. I don't know. Just so many things in translation are so serious and prize winners and this and that. And I get it. I get why that's happening, but it's nice every now and then to be able to inject a book into the translation marketplace. That's just really fun.
Why is that happening?
I think I'm sure you have more opinions on this than I do, and more informed opinions on this than I do, and Tom too. But my perception of it is that it's such a risk for publishers to do translations, or they perceive it as such a risk to do translations, and it's so expensive, and they have to pay for the rights, and they have to pay the translator, and this and that, that they want to make sure that the book has as good a chance of success as possible. And sometimes success gets equated with, success in the original country, or prizes in the original country, or like the prolificness of the author in the original country. And those books tend to be more serious because prizes go to the serious books, and the big serious reviews go to the big serious books, and it's just a cycle of those things in the original country that do have these like things attached to them of the recognition and the praise, and the prizes are going to be what ends up getting translated, and those things can be so dull. So
like the idea that a lot of the presses are doing it for the cultural capital, and the only cultural capital you can get is from a book that's serious.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's related to that. I've been doing, for this article I have to write for Publishers Weekly, I've been going through the past 3 years of the translation database and looking up, this is so tedious and so stupid, but looking up every single book to see what it was categorized on Ingram, like crime, thriller, speculative fiction, romance. There's one Western, which I found, which is bizarre. All short stories by a single author, all that kind of stuff, just to see like what the breakdown is. Because I haven't calculated it yet, so I can't say anything. But I'm curious to see like what the levels are of like crime versus sci-fi versus regular fiction or general fiction. But one thing that's funny is that I have hit more of ones that are categorized as being comedy or humorous than I ever expected. But they're never books that I ever heard of. They're like weird, popular books, I guess. But like books I never would have looked at it, picked up, but apparently there are some that people are doing.
Okay. I don't know why I'm not more aware of those.
Me neither. Like I'd have to go back and find them because I wasn't marking that, because I wasn't one of the categories that I was tracking. So I just go by it, but be like, what? This is a lot of like comedy in a row. But I don't know them. You probably wouldn't know them either, and you probably wouldn't read them if you did. But anyway, so how about translating this? What was the process of translating her book like for you?
It was really fun. I didn't have any contact with her, I'll say that. She had to approve my like sample that I sent in. But other than that, I don't know whether or not like she read it at all before it came out. But I worked really closely with Lauren Hook at the Feminist Press, she's incredible. She's such a good editor and such a good person. And the whole Feminist Press is so great to work with in general. So just want to give them a shout out. But basically, the book has a lot of dialogue. And so it was a lot of kind of trying to get the voices right and trying to make the dialogue sound realistic. And I think dialogue is so hard to translate. And especially in a book like this, where it's kind of rough and gritty and slangy, but also not like the slang of right now. But you want it to read like teenage or like 20-something-year-olds would talk right now, because otherwise it sounds dated and weird. But you also don't want to use words like lit or on fleek, because right. A, that's stupid, but B, it just really puts it in a specific time. And so just kind of having like a generic grit and a generic slang to it, while giving the characters their own voices and developing those voices. And so that was kind of the biggest challenge of translating the book.
It's interesting because it does seem like it's like could apply at any point in time, or like the voices don't sound like they're tied to a particular point in time. And in a way, it does feel like a very like early 2000s sort of book where like these things could happen. Because now it seems so much less likely that you have this sort of like pop star sort of moment the way that it does within the world of this book.
Right.
But I see what you mean with that. Did you read? So you read Apocalypse Baby. Did you read it in French or in English?
I read Apocalypse Baby in English. I read King Kong Theory also in English. Mm-hmm. And then I've read some of her other books that haven't been translated yet I read Pretty Things in French, obviously, and some of her other things in French. But I don't know, if something's out in translation, I'm probably going to read it in translation.
Okay. Because I was curious, because it does, it's the tone was very similar to in my memory. I mean, it's been a few years since I read Apocalypse Baby, but when I picked this up, it was like immediately her writing seemed to be her writing, and it was her voice, like very, very clearly from the start. And I wondered if that was like something that you had done intentionally, or if it's just like that's how she writes.
Oh, definitely not something I did intentionally, because I haven't read Apocalypse Baby since it came out.
Yeah.
And I actually wasn't a huge... I'm a fan of that book, but not as much as Tom was, and nothing to do with the translation, just not as much my kind of thing as this book was.
Uh-huh.
But that's really nice to hear that it's at least a little bit consistent, even if it wasn't purposeful on my part. I do think that she does have this very strong way of writing and a very strong style that kind of makes her easier to translate than somebody else would be, who's like switching between styles or who doesn't have as strong of a voice. And so it probably was going to happen no matter what if you put two competent translators on two of her books.
Right.
I would also say that I think there, and it's not the entire book in Apocalypse Baby, because there's a lot more strands of plot in that book. But there's definitely a lot of the characters from Pretty Things in the characters of Apocalypse Baby.
Yeah.
So the voice was definitely sort of similar. I mean, all of this to say, like, these two, I think, are of a particular voice. And then I think if you take King Kong Theory, for example, it's very different, right? Different tone entirely. And probably that the writing in French is probably a little different than these two. So.
Yeah, I think she's really good at crafting these characters, and all the characters throughout her different books. I don't know if you read Bye Bye Blondie.
No, I have not.
I think that was out last year or 2 years ago, also at Feminist Press.
I don't think we got a copy of that one.
Okay, I know I reviewed it for your blog. For
We probably sent it to you then.
No, I think whatever, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, yeah.
The book, I feel like that book is very similar to Pretty Things in the way that the characters are crafted and who the characters are. They're 20-somethings in Paris, kind of like mucking around, trying to figure out how to live. And that felt, if the main character of that book is a woman who's struggling with mental health issues and with like toxic men in her life and drug use and all of these things, and that felt very similar to me to Pretty Things. And
right.
I didn't go back and reread that, but I'm sure that kind of influenced the way that I translated. But I feel like her characters all kind of embody the same zone of, young people who are really kind of grimy and who are just trying to fucking figure things out. And that I think is going to carry across all of her books because that's what she's interested in.
There's I want to ask you about her newer books, but there's my favorite section of this, or favorite line, which I used on the post we made about this, is on 196, where Pauline's playing video games with the guy, and he's watching her play. I forget what his name is. Nicholas? Sure. He watches her play, tense over her controller. She does what girls do, scolds herself for things nonstop. Fuck, Pauline, what are you doing? Instead of insulting the machine, which I love that bit. And that sort of encapsulates for me what her books are like, where it's like a critique of the system without being like, overly anything. Just having it be right there in that moment makes sense as to like why she's both trapped by the system and how it's damaging to her.
Right. And it's just so natural. Like,
yeah.
It's just kind of thrown in there because it's true and it's relevant and it comes up in daily life. Like, I'm sure Tom watches me do things a million times a day that are so indicative of me just being a woman and being used to scolding myself for things. Oh my gosh, every time I make a mistake at Riff Raff, I'm immediately like, God, I'm such an idiot, and like get so mad at myself. And her books just feel so natural in that way, where like she's making comments, like she's pointing things out to you, but they're not like fabricated for the sake of making a point.
Right, exactly. So good. So what is the new books that she's working on? Is it Vernon Subutex?
Yes.
Yeah, and I will say right now that neither Tom nor I have read those books.
Oh, you haven't? No. Okay.
So, well, I'm desperate to get my hands on a copy of the translation because I hear it's so good and I trust that it's so good, and it's just that's the kind of book that we have a copy of it in French, but man, do Tom and I not have any time to read anything anymore. And so it's
Yeah.
just easier for me to read things in English. But I don't know. I'm like, it's too long to wait. Now that I know it's not coming out in English in America anytime soon, I'm probably just going to read it in French.
Is it next fall?
It's a year from now.
Yeah. So you're, yeah.
US? Who's publishing in the U.S.?
FSG.
Gee, okay.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping that it would be Feminist Press too, because I like how all their books look.
Yeah.
Oh, with
And
the
I like
Molly
them.
Crabapple drawings, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The Molly Crabapple drawings are really nice.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I think I remember the French rights holder. I forget which publisher it is, wanting more money than the Feminist Press could afford to give for the trilogy.
So it's a trilogy. Yeah. What do you know about it? I guess.
Very little,
Okay.
except my perception is that she sort of amps up her style a little bit and gets more. I don't want to say experimental because it wouldn't be quite that, but it's definitely more challenging and dense. I will say when I was working at Albertine when the first two came out, and the customers who bought it absolutely loved it, like just raved about it nonstop. So
yeah, I feel like we would like it a lot, but I've heard that it's very French, like very rooted in French cultural references and things that would be really hard to translate. And so I'm sort of I'm always curious to read things in translation, even if I haven't read the original. But I heard Donald Nicholson Smith told me at some event, he was like, I don't understand how anybody could translate that book.
Huh.
So I'm really curious. But at this point, I don't want to wait a year. So I'll probably end up reading the French copy we have.
Can't you guys just get the UK one through like Gardeners?
No. I mean, we'd have to do it. We would have to buy it for ourselves. So there's no distribution. Yeah, I think we can.
But Gardeners distributes to the US some of those books.
I don't know. I think through Canada is also probably a possibility because those UK publishers often have Commonwealth rights.
When I was in Montreal, I couldn't find it in English.
Oh, interesting. Anyway, yes, we'll have to get around to it.
One thing we didn't mention that Frank Wynn is the person who translated it. The first 2 volumes? Yes. Did he finish the second one yet, or is it just the first one that's out?
Only the first one is out.
Okay.
He's still working on the other 2. He has done some Welbeck as well, I believe.
I think that's right, yeah.
Right. He did like Elementary Particles and some things like that. So I think I'd have to go grab the books. But anything else about... I don't know, Chad, when will this podcast go up?
Tomorrow.
Emma will be in New York.
Oh, yeah. There's an event in New York for Pretty Things Thursday, September 6th at 7 p.m. at McNally, and I'll be talking with Alexander Kleeman about the book.
Oh, yeah. So this will be out before then. So anyone who's listening to this, that should be tomorrow. If you downloaded it the day that it came out, then tomorrow you can go to McNally Jackson and see Emma there.
They did a really creepy graphic. I guess McNally has been doing these new graphics for their events where they Photoshop the people in the events. And they did a really creepy graphic of me and Alexander Kleeman that's made to look like we have our arms around each other.
Oh.
But it's clearly Photoshopped. But they chose photos of us, I guess, from our Facebook pages where we look really similar, probably on purpose because it's a book about twins, but it's very weird. See what I mean?
Oh.
I need to find that.
If you just go to their events page and click on the calendar, it is here. That is weird.
It's really weird.
I mean, it just looks like you're leaning into her very close.
But this is a picture that was originally of you and me, Tom.
Yeah, and that's probably Alexander with her husband or something. And cut out the men, put the 2 of you together.
Anyway.
Oh. Anyway.
Yeah. Huh.
It's weird, right?
Okay. Anyway, yeah, everyone should go see that tomorrow.
And Emma was when I told her we were, getting back to talking about books, she said, if you want to mention that I said this about this book, but now she's here, so I'll let her say it.
Have you read Chad Mouthful of Birds, the new Schweblin?
No.
Did you like Fever Dream?
No.
Okay.
We published one of her stories in one of our anthologies a long time ago. It's fine. She's fine. It's not my favorite, but we don't have that book either. We haven't gotten that in.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, in because I'm all about honesty and not giving into the machine that says that we have to like everything that everybody else likes. I really was disappointed in Mouthful of Birds, and I'm sure I'm gonna get shit for saying that, but I loved Fever Dream. It's still a staff pick in our store 8 months after we opened. Like I really loved Fever Dream. And I was so excited for this book and had really high hopes. And man, this book did not live up to them. The translation's great, whatever, but all the books from all the stories in it for me just kind of fell flat. And I was really bummed out. I was really bummed.
That's too bad.
It doesn't come out to January, so maybe we'll just, these comments will just drift away, Emma. Don't worry about it.
No one will remember by January.
No one will remember by January.
Or yeah. If Tom or I said it, they would remember, and they would bring it up a few times.
Right. Yeah.
But I love Megan McDowell, and usually everything she touches for me is incredible. But this feels to me like this book was kind of put together to capitalize on the success of Fever Dream. And if this book had come out first before Fever Dream, then it wouldn't have made a splash, if that makes sense.
It's funny because she really is more of a short story writer than, I don't know if you call Fever Dream a novel, but, longer than a short story.
Fever Dream felt like her shining story. And these are all like not quite as good as Fever Dream.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Fever Dream came out on its own first.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Don't at me.
Anyway.
That's the sort of slang you can't use in pretty things.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's nice. Tom, do you have anything that you want to crap on?
I do not. No.
You want to deflect from that, huh? Cool. I probably won't be reading that book.
Yeah, I'm not going to bother.
Well, you form your own opinions. Read it yourself. This is just my opinion.
There's so much stuff, man. There's so much stuff.
Yeah, I was just looking through like our, to be read stack of galleys, and it's just so overwhelming. All right, I think that'll about do it, right, Chad?
Yeah,
right?
I don't think there's anything else to add at this point in time. So thanks for coming on, Emma.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and Chad, we're gonna just to get this out into the open to our listeners, we are going to commit every 2 weeks, do a new episode. Travel be damned, we'll get this done.
We will.
Right?
We can have it out every other Wednesday.
Yes. All right.
That'll
Until then.
Okay. Take care, guys.
Thanks. Bye.